Live from Hollywood, this is the KTLA Morning Show.
We're back now. The arrest of suspect John Carr in the JonBenet Ramsey murder has added fuel to the heated debate over how to best protect our kids from sexual predators. We have psychologist and author Dr. Deborah Mandel here with some tangible advice for families who are looking to take care of their kids. A pleasure to have you back.
Thank you so much.
It's a serious topic we're talking about. Can you first highlight the differences between a sex offender and a pedophile? Because I think there's a lot of use of both of those words right now in the news.
Yes, and pedophiles are sex offenders, but all sex offenders are not necessarily pedophiles. A pedophile is specifically somebody who has sexual arousal toward prepubescent children.
Okay.
So a sex offender, you could be a sex offender at 16 and running after other 16-year-olds and raping them. But that's not necessarily a pedophile, because that's a fully fledged woman at that time, even though she's still legally underage. But a pedophile is actually attracted to children before they're have all their genital characteristics.
One of the things that I know that we've heard in past pedophile cases, that these people are often profiled as people who have gained the trust of either family or school, even the children themselves. They're often seen lurking around.
Yes.
Schoolyards are areas where children's frequent, yes?
Right. The myth that pedophiles are hanging out in a dark alley with a trench coat in the side and that's who you can spot them very, very easily, that's just really not the case. A lot of times these guys, and they're usually guys by and large, are people who have worked their way into the trust of the family, and they're very sneaky and very manipulative. But on an emotional level, they're often mere children themselves.
Yeah.
They're not emotionally mature, and they have a lot of issues. Oftentimes, they've been seriously abused in childhood. We're even understanding that possibly Carr's mother had tried to set him on fire when he was a child. I mean, oftentimes there was a lot of abuse, sexual perpetration against the predator himself.
Are there clear patterns? I mean, we've even been seeing what you mentioned about John Carr, the suspect in the JonBenet Ramsey case, that you say that there are clear patterns that indicate that he is a pedophile. What kind of clear patterns are we talking about?
Well, for one, I mean, he has a strong association with child pornography. That's not necessarily acting on a sexual disturbance, but it is still, being attached and attracted to that kind of stuff it's a sign of serious disturbance.
Right.
He's a very strange man when you look at him, when you hear him talk. I mean, this is an odd person. He's very bizarre. We may discover later on that he borders on delusional. There could be some schizophrenia there too that I don't think anybody's addressed, but the way he talks and the things that he thinks about are even on the far extreme of most pedophiles that I've encountered.
Now that we've profiled pedophiles, let's talk about the tools that parents need.
Yes.
We live in a different world than than you and I grew up in.
Right.
How do we protect our kids without making them be afraid to walk the streets?
That's what's really tough, is because you have to balance with giving them information, but at the same time not terrifying them.
Okay.
You have to really protect children.
How do we do that?
When you have young children, you got to be on top of them all the time. You do have to watch them. You don't just let a 5-year-old go down to the bathroom by themselves, which a lot of people want to encourage independence in their kids. You might do that for a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old when you can see them, but you don't do that for a young child. So we do really have to be protective and watchful, and we don't let our kids go off with strangers when they're younger. Babysitting, things like that, you have to be very, very careful about screening.
Sure.
Like if you sent your child to a school, you would screen the school. You have to screen people who come in contact with your kids. Also, you got to be on the watch for people who have nothing to do with the family but try to weave their way in, like you have a neighbor down the street who wants to come over a lot and hang out with your kids. That's a little bizarre.
Before we run out of time, we have to go, but I want to know what you think of these baby beauty pageants. I know that there's been a lot of criticism. You're not a fan of them.
Oh my gosh, I think they're awful. I think the sexualization of young girls in this culture is just appalling, and it's ruining their self-esteem. It's not helping them grow up. I had worked a lot with people like Britney Spears, people like that, understanding their dynamics, and you know what? It's not good. It's not pretty.
It's a tough world we live in, and we need to protect our little girls and boys, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Dr. Mandel, it's always a pleasure having you here. This is the cover of her latest book, Your Boss Is Not Your Mother. A great read. Dr. Mandel is in Encino and Thousand Oaks. We'll have her information on our website. Always a pleasure to have you here.
So
Thanks
much.
for taking on this tough topic with us.
You bet.
We'll be back in a moment.
Now I'm smiling again. Surprised 'cause you showed up with your parachute.